Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of
Hello,
insanity.
and welcome to episode 16 of PvA Radio. I am one of your hosts, Luke Croft, joining me as always, freelance gaming journalist Cody Mello-Klein. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Feeling fall today. How about you?
I am doing fantastic. Also joining us, the one man who still does not believe that this podcast is a serious thing, Larry Hunt.
I mean, convince me.
So to let the listeners in and Cody in on this joke, because we've made it a couple times with him here, it took my friend group quite a while, like the better part of a year probably, to realize that when we started the Player 3 podcast that I was serious about wanting to do a gaming podcast. And now here we are. How long has it been, Larry?
Oh gosh, has it been? It's been like 5 years.
It's been
6
almost.
years?
It's been 4.5 years, I think. Yeah, almost 5 years.
Longer than I've had children. I know that.
Crazy, crazy. Cody, you said you're feeling fall today. You told me before the show you raked a bunch of leaves. Is that what's getting you into the spirit?
Yeah. Every year around fall, and I don't think people who don't really have seasons will understand this. There's a dread that comes with seeing all the leaves just steadily fall onto your lawn and knowing that you will have to confront these leaves at some point.
Yes.
And it's rivaled only by the joy of being able to then jump into that pile of leaves you've just created, which I still do as a 25-year-old man.
Only to realize that the rake is buried in there somewhere. Yeah, I've got this giant pin oak out in front of the bay window and on the front of our house, and we'll just sit there during the day, and it's just a steady fall of leaves coming off of that tree, and then a giant pile of leaves that we're too lazy to get up and then end up rotting and making a hard, terrible mess to mow come spring.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, guys. Well, this is PvA Radio. We get together every week, and we each bring one of the biggest gaming news stories of the week to the table, and we have an in-depth discussion about it. It's a collaborative audio feature article, if you will, a CAFA. Get it tattooed on your body somewhere. Mm-hmm. You can find us on podcast services everywhere, with new episodes posting every Tuesday. We're also on YouTube. You can search PvA Radio. You'll find us there. And if you want to be a part of the show, you can visit playerversusall.com/PVAQ. Submit questions there. Also, we're going to be streaming soon, starting soon. Holiday season's coming around. Dude, guys, Thanksgiving is next week.
No. I know. Like, that just hit me today. That's ridiculous.
Insane. But in the midst of all the craziness, I'm going to find time to make it out to Larry's house to get him set up on OBS and allow us to live stream our episodes. But you can preemptively follow us over on twitch.tv/PvA Radio. Hit the notification bell. You'll know the first time we go live for a new episode. It's one thing that we desperately miss from the Player 3 podcast days.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Enough of that. Let's talk about what we've been playing. Cody, what have you been playing?
I dove back into Overwatch a little bit.
Yeah. You pinged us on Slack today and said that you're back in it. And is there something specifically that's drawn you back in?
I wanted to just start playing it a little bit before the new character comes out. And I just missed it. Like, I fall in and out of favor with that game. I haven't been playing it much because of Red Dead, but I went back and I've been playing it the past few days. Definitely not diving into competitive by myself, but just playing casual games. Still love it. Still having fun. But other than that, I went back and kind of finished the last two of the main story arcs of Assassin's Creed Odyssey because I hadn't finished them by the time Red Dead came out, and I wanted to finish it just to kind of check it off my checklist. And man, going back to that game after playing Red Dead was interesting. To say it felt like sniffing cocaine compared to Red Dead would be an understatement. I just felt like I was fucking floating over the world. In a good way and a bad way. Like, obviously the movement speed and everything about the game is infinitely faster than Red Dead. And that is good and bad. After having sunk so much time into Red Dead and having just been in that world for the past week or so, it felt weird to go into an open world and just feel like I was skating over the surface and not really a part of it, which, I don't know, I guess I'm just not used to fast traveling, and everything about Assassin's Creed just encourages you to fast travel from point to point to point to complete quests, and it doesn't really feel like you're part of the world after a while. I still enjoy the hell out of that game, and I got into the weird, wacky sci-fi stuff at the end. But it was just an interesting experience going back to it after having played Red Dead for so long.
And that may be a part of my issue with like the pace of Red Dead is that I'm also playing Overwatch, and I play with pretty high sensitivity on because I'm off tanking. So Overwatch can be pretty frenetic and high paced, and then jumping out of that and jumping into Red Dead, it's just like this very jarring juxtaposition.
Yeah, and the shooting just isn't as tight.
Yeah. Like at first, they had like that lock on mechanic when in the gunplay for Red Dead, and at first it's like, man, I wish they wouldn't do this. But then you try to like play without it, and you realize how just impossible it is to aim. Have you been doing anything in first person mode?
I literally only use first person mode when I go into houses and search everything, because the hit detection for trying to parse through materials when you're in third person is nearly impossible.
That's a good idea. I should try that, because I've been wondering what the gunplay is like first person. But if it's anything like GTA 5, it doesn't get any better. If anything, it'll get worse.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Larry, what have you been playing?
I've been gone for a lot of this week. As part of my job, I took some high schoolers to tour college, so I haven't had time to play very many games. So I've only played Overwatch this week, and I don't understand how we can be 2 years into this game, 2.5 years into this game, and still have so many people who don't understand the basics of this game. I don't remember this week or a previous week, but like the thing that stands out is we had a team, and everyone agreed to go dive, and then our healer picked Moira, and you were like, Moira's not really a dive healer. He's like, no, she'll be fine. It's no problem. And it was on Hanamura, and then we were like, all right, we're going through the window. He's like, no, guys, don't go through the window, because Moira can't, because she's not dive. Man. I don't know.
No, it's frustrating. I did some solo queuing in competitive play over the weekend.
And now you're low bronze. I understand.
Because I'm just a glutton for punishment. And we got into this game, and 5 of us had picked already, and we didn't have a main tank. We were 2-2-2 the rest of the way. And the sixth guy, like right before the doors were about to open at the start of the game, picks Junkrat. And I was like, hey, man, we need a main tank. And he ignored me. But then he hops on the mic to talk about how bad the team sucks and how we can't, and how he always gets put on the sucky team and yada, yada. And then he quit halfway through the game. And I was just like, how is the team the one that sucks when you're the one who does something with complete disregard for the rest of the team? And I try not to be. I joke about being toxic. I try not to be toxic when I play.
You try to internalize your toxicity.
Yeah, and it's because at its core, I think Overwatch should be a positive, fun experience. And like the best Overwatch is when you're working as a team. And it's not just that these people are playing the game the way that they want or whatever. It's that they're playing the game in such a way that's detrimental to the enjoyment of the game for everybody else they're playing with. And it's really hard to like quell the tilt when stuff like that happens. And I was watching. Go ahead.
And especially with me and you and most of the people we play with, like, well, I wouldn't say that, but a handful of who we play with, Like, we have so many people who are willing to flex, but we can't make up for an entire team of people who want to be selfish, you know?
Yeah. I watch a lot of Jane coaching videos. He's the head coach for the Canadian national team, and I think he coaches Dallas. He's like an assistant coach for Dallas. But anyway, he puts together these like super comprehensive coaching videos. He does VOD reviews, but this weekend he was breaking down VODs of the World Cup matches. But before he got into any of the games, he was talking about how like he kind of despairs over the fact that 99% of people who play Overwatch will never get to experience Overwatch like in its purest and best form, which is 6 people collaboratively working together in such a way because they know what they want to do as a team. Like, and even if you're queuing up with 6 different people generally, or if you and 5 other people are queuing up and you have a chance to like talk going into the game, you still don't know each other's play styles enough to really like capture that essence of it. And so I'm really after that now. Like, I've been thinking about going out and joining like an organized team that, because there's a lot of like community organized tournaments and stuff like that goes on, and I've just been thinking about like trying out for them so that I can scrim with them and kind of get that organization again. The stuff I miss about like intramural sports from when I was in college, just that teamwork, the strategy, and I want to be part of the 1% that gets to experience the game as it was intended. So I guess that's a long way of saying I've been playing Overwatch. And then I've been playing a little bit of Red Dead as well. I'm kind of I was this way with The Witcher too, with The Witcher 3 as well, where it's like I love the game. I'm having a really great time with it. I like the characters and the story more than I like anything else about the game, more so than the gameplay or anything like that. And so, but it's such an overwhelming prospect anytime I jump into it that I'm like, I just got to take this in. It's like eating a whale, you know, you just got to do it one bite at a time. And,
Exactly, yeah.
And I feel like this is a game that I'm going to be like 2 years from now, I'll be like, guys, I finally rolled the credits on Red Dead. And it's not for a lack of enjoyment in it. It's just because it's so overwhelming. And I'm the kind of guy who wants to play a bunch of stuff. Like, I think Fallout 76 comes out tonight, right?
Wednesday, I think.
Oh, that's weird.
That is weird. But the person who told me that was Ben, so
Okay.
I need to double check it.
I feel like I was listening to Kind of Funny Games Daily today, and they were talking about it unlocking at 12:01 tonight. So
Do they know anything about games?
I'm gonna look it up real quick.
Okay.
Do you have that game pre-ordered, Larry?
I do. It's the first game I've pre-ordered in a really long time, actually. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm going to play the crap out of that game this week.
Today's the 12th.
Yes.
Well, I'll be damned. Ben was right.
All right.
It comes out November 14th. So
That's very weird.
That's weird.
it's very, very strange. Just goes to show you the release date doesn't matter.
Oh, well, actually, yeah, Battlefield comes out Thursday. I doubt they would even consider that in their decision. And Battlefield got delayed anyway, so.
In Battlefield, well, we're going to talk about this here in a second. Well, let's go ahead and talk about it now, Cody. Great segue.
Hey.
Into your topic. Lay it on us.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about Battlefield 5, specifically the choice DICE has made and EA in how they're releasing the game. And I want to talk about this in 2 different ways. I want to talk about it in the actual quote-unquote launch of the game, and then about the way they're releasing content after it quote-unquote launches. So DICE recently revealed they actually had to make a chart because the release schedule of this game is so bizarre. And essentially, the breakdown is that people who are EA Access subscribers at I think it's the deluxe level, are able to access the game first. I want to say it was last week. Let me
November
double check
9th.
that.
I got this pulled up for you.
Yeah, November 9th. And they're able to access the full game. That's Origin Access Premier subscribers, and then those who subscribe at the basic level are able to access. We're able to access on the 9th, but just for a 10-hour trial. And those on Xbox were also able to access it for a 10-hour trial if they were subscribed
With
EA Access, not Origin Access. And then November 15th, which is this Thursday, correct?
Yes.
That's people who pre-ordered the game and got the deluxe collector's edition are able to access it then. And then next week on the 20th, when the game officially launches, is when people who just straight up bought the game, the standard edition of the game, get to access it. And so that's a very complicated and overly complicated and convoluted release schedule. Definitely not unprecedented. This kind of stuff isn't new. It's just an evolution of stuff that's been going on with the way people release their games. I guess first off, I just wanted to kind of get your guys' thoughts about this kind of staggered release schedule. What are your thoughts on it? What do you guys think it does for EA and DICE, and what do you think it does for consumers?
I mean, it's obviously got to be financially a financially viable option, like and advantageous, because, like you said, this is nothing new, and it's nothing new for EA. You know, this may be the first time Battlefield has had a release schedule like this, but I know for Madden at least, they've been doing like if you get the $100 version of the game, you get it X amount of days early, and they've done that now for a couple of years. And so there has to be something within the numbers that says like, hey, there are enough people who want to play these games X amount of days early that they're willing to pay $40 extra for the game. Because I'm assuming the deluxe edition is a $100 version of it, correct?
Yeah, it's definitely more expensive than $60 or $70.
Yeah, so like NBA 2K did something like this, and it was a little ridiculous. So NBA 2K has like a $60 version, a $100 version, and then like a $120 version or something like that. And they put the early access bonus behind the $100 paywall, but when it came to like the in-game items that you got with it, the in-game items only equaled like $10 or something, $10 or $20, and it's like, so you're telling me that several days of early access to your game is worth $20 or $30, and I don't see it. Like, I don't get that at all. I've never wanted to play a game early that badly that I'd be willing to spend $40 more than what I could spend just like 3 to 5 days later.
Yeah, it's for sure convoluted, but I'll agree with you there. Obviously, there are enough people who are willing to pay for the extra to get it early. So I'm kind of ambivalent on it. This wouldn't motivate me to spend the extra money, but hey, if someone's willing to pay for it, I guess it's fine.
Yeah, and I think it probably bears out in terms of server load. It allows them to kind of onboard people in stages. There's still going to be an enormous amount of people who play it on the 20th when it officially launches. But I guess I would imagine it sort of helps them meter out that server load a little bit more. As someone who is planning on buying Battlefield 5 at the standard level, I'm just going to buy the base game. I do feel like this is pushing me in a direction to either subscribe to their services or to buy more expensive versions of the game to get in early. And I don't feel pressured enough to actually do it. But I do feel in a game like this, and in the case of Madden and 2K, I guess you could apply this as well. For games that are multiplayer focused and skill focused, like Battlefield and all these games, I do feel like it's kind of a disadvantage for me as someone who's coming in how like a week later to play this game with people who have already been playing it for a week.
Yeah, but doesn't it kind of feel like when somebody blows past you in the left-hand lane and then you both get stopped at the same red light? It's like we're going to eventually end up in the same place. Like I'm going to rank up. I'm going to get the guns. I'm going to learn the maps the way that you've learned the maps. Like I know that that's a perceived advantage for a lot of people. Like that's a big deal in 2K, especially where you're doing like the my player stuff and it takes forever to build those characters up. But it's like either A, you're going to get there in your time just naturally, or B, you've got people who are like, I'll buy the $60 version and then just pump out cash to purchase the upgrade points or whatever. Battlefield 5 doesn't have anything that you can pay to upgrade like that. But I just feel like that's one of those, like, it's just an impatient kind of deal because we're all going to get to the same place eventually.
Yeah, but I do think it creates a frustrating on-ramp into the game because I know how Battlefield plays, and I played the beta for this game, and I imagine they've tweaked it a little bit, but it is much faster than Battlefield 1 was. Your time to kill is a lot faster. Your time to die is certainly a lot faster. And playing with people who have already kind of experienced the game for a week or so, and to have, I'm not really even worried about like the higher level guns. They're just kind of used to the systems a little bit more than I am. I can imagine there being a bit of frustration towards the beginning, especially as I'm getting my legs under me and learning the systems and learning how all the guns work and all that. I think you're right. I mean, eventually we're going to come to that red light. I'm gonna be able to rank up. We're all gonna get to the same level at some point. But I think it provides a little frustration. And more than just how it affects me playing the game, it feels like as a base level player, I'm being undervalued by DICE and EA, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. Do you guys feel at all like this? I guess I put punish in the document, but I think punish might be too harsh. Do you think this is an example of them kind of rewarding a specific kind of player and a specific, I won't say player, but maybe them leaning more into a subscriber-based model than just the base player level?
Anytime you incentivize something in a way, you also punish the person who doesn't do the thing that's incentivized. So I don't think punish is necessarily too strong of a word. And they actually, I mean, I would agree they are placing more value on a certain type of player who's willing to spend the money on the extra services or the more expensive game. But like I said, I think that's true anytime you incentivize something like this. For me, it comes down to, are they going over the top with it? And although I don't like this release model, I also, it doesn't hit me as slimy like a lot of what EA does. Because ultimately you will be able to catch up. I do agree that on-ramp is going to be frustrating at first. But for me, it's not terrible. And if it's helping them sell deluxe copies of their game, I guess I'm okay with it.
Yeah. The EA Access thing, that's one of my favorite parts of the EA Access service, and I actually need to download Battlefield 5 now that I know that I can, because I pay $30 a year for that service, and I get access to the Vault, which has a ton of EA games in it. Battlefield 1's in there. All of the Mass Effect games are in there. All the older sports games are in there as well. Like there's just a ton of EA games that are in that service. And I think bang for your buck wise, EA Access is awesome. And so if Battlefield 5 is just like, hey, I'm really looking forward to Battlefield 5, my schedule now, I'm like, I probably wouldn't reach the 10-hour limit before the game comes out on the 20th anyway. You can pay $5 a month to get into the EA Access program and download it. And so rather than having to spend $40 on the deluxe edition to get it 5 days early, you can just drop $5 for the month, download it, play your 10 hours of multiplayer. Because if it's anything like and it may not be like this anymore, but they used to say that it's like 10 hours of trial time, but you can only do 2 hours of the story mode or something like that, so that people who were just interested in the single player couldn't beat it and then not buy the game. But anyway, yeah, like you have that 10 hours to do with what you want. And so I think that there's, and I mean, I guess if you're on PlayStation 4, you don't have that option, but in enough places, I think there's a cheap enough entry spot to get into that early. That's not just like, hey, you got to give us $40 extra to play this game early. And so I think that, that's the teaspoon of sugar with the medicine right there.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is kind of like a, I don't even necessarily think that it's like a subconscious thing. I think it's pretty evident that this kind of release schedule makes it really hard to garner any kind of hype around a game, whatever that like abstract concept of hype is. But, you know, you look at a game like Red Dead. Red Dead had one day that it came out, you know. There was no early access for pre-ordering. Like they have a digital content model or whatever with exclusive to PlayStation, but they had one day for people to pinpoint on their calendars to look forward to. And I think EA has just constantly been bungling these release dates because, especially when it came to Madden, like Madden release night used to be an event, and now it's broken up over multiple days, and it's hard to attract people's attention in any kind of meaningful way. And with this is spread out over almost 2 weeks of time. And I think it's hard to control your message that long.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. I mean, it's not the first time we've seen the idea of a launch kind of a studio experimenting with what that even means. Like any early access title is kind of like that. Early access literally doesn't mean anything anymore because of the Fortnites and the Minecrafts of the world. I do think that EA is it's interesting because I don't even know if they're concerned about that bungled message because they're viewing Battlefield 5 as a product that will probably gain steam over time. The way I see them releasing content as well is similar to the way I think the game will launch and kind of pick up steam over time is the way that Siege worked. Siege on launch, I think it was pretty content light, and I don't think Battlefield 5 will be content light at launch, but I do think it's the kind of game that people dive into at launch. They're like, oh, there's a really solid foundation here. This is really fun to play. They might duck out of it after the launch period, but just over time, it picks up steam. More content comes out. Obviously, the Battle Royale mode for Battlefield 5 comes out next year. Tides of War launches in December. So they have these milestones. I think they're thinking about the launch and kind of the release of this game as something that will just evolve over time. They're launching a game that is not unfinished. It's extreme to call it an early access-esque title, but I do think there's something early access about it in that it is a game that launches but will evolve heavily and change heavily over time. It's not content light, but it's definitely missing content at launch.
Yeah, I don't trust EA in that model, and this isn't like a shit on EA party. I just don't think the evidence of them being able to accomplish that is there. Like, I think Battlefield 1 had a strong and passionate fan base, but I wouldn't call it huge, you know?
No.
I think EA constantly has this battle of just like, all right, we're going to release with a bang, and then it's going to fizzle out so fast. And even with that rolled out schedule, you know, like the Rainbow Six Siege thing, that's not the model you aspire to. Like, Ubisoft didn't launch that game hoping that it would be received the way that it was received in the beginning and then have to claw out from the pit, you know? Whereas, like, with this model with EA, I just think, like, why would you not just hold until you have this battle royale? Like, look at Call of Duty, you know? They got so much good press off of Blackout, and it's like, why would you not set yourself up in that position? And then, I mean, not to mention that it's just like it's coming out right there before Thanksgiving, right before Black Friday. Like it's a weird time, and I just feel like if you don't pull in as many people as you can right in the beginning, you fight a much, and this isn't a hot take. I mean, this is common sense. Like, if you don't attract a huge audience in the beginning, it's harder to gain an audience than it is to retain an audience. And I just don't think the way that they are handling the release of this game is the best way to gain an audience out of the gate.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. Although I don't think their move is slimy toward consumers necessarily, I also don't think it's wise for this type of game. And I see what they're trying to do. I get it. Like seeing Rainbow Six Siege grow, The Division grow, and even a game like Overwatch that was received really well but maintained longevity by constantly adding and evolving. I see wanting to do that, but I don't know that this is the game to do it with. And I worry for their sake that it'll be more like the Telltale season model. Like there's too much space between things happening, and the things happening aren't a big enough thing to pull people back in. And they want to maintain relevance and dominate the news cycle over and over again. But I worry that they'll never actually be a big thing. They'll just kind of limp along.
Especially if, like, let's say, you know, they're doing Battle Royale. You said in January, right, Cody?
It's at the beginning of next year. I don't know the exact date.
Well, they better hope it's January, because once February gets here, like,
Yeah, Armageddon.
yeah, seriously, there's going to be 10 million different games to play, and it's like, are we going to say, oh, we want to play Anthem, or we want to play, and that's another EA property. Like, they're going to Titanfall 2 themselves again. They'll cannibalize themselves. Or do we want to play Anthem? Do we want to play The Division 2? Do we want to play any number of these games that are releasing at the end of February? Or do we want to go back and play this old game from, gross 2018?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think his name is Ryan MacArthur, who's the kind of the live service content director at DICE.
I think it's Douglas MacArthur.
Is it Douglas MacArthur?
No, that's a World War II general.
Well, it's appropriate. I think he did an interview with VG 24/7 where he mentioned that part of the reason that, and I think this is only half the truth, but part of the reason that they're deciding to kind of parse out content is to avoid falling into the trap that they fell into with Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1 very much relied on the season pass model, and this Battlefield 5 is obviously EA's attempt to escape that model and move more towards live service content, releasing all the add-ons that'll come out for free, buoyed on the money they gain from cosmetic microtransactions. But he said that the reason they're spacing out content is to avoid splintering the player base, which is an interesting take. They want to give each mode its breathing room, which is certainly a reason that you might want to do it. I don't know if it's enough of a justification for it. I do think, like, for whatever reason, delaying the release of the Battle Royale mode is very much a mistake. I think that coming out in this time, it's removed enough from Call of Duty for it to have a little bit of a chance. And I do agree on a certain level. As someone who played Battlefield 1 a lot and who did get the season pass, there was a legitimate problem with splintering the player base with that content. I got the last expansion. I can't remember the name of it, but I couldn't even find, like, they separated the game into, like, separate. You could search for separate content packages and go into games based on those content packages, or you could just go into a playlist that had every single map or just the base maps. And if you went into any of the playlists that featured new content or downloadable content, it was almost impossible to find people to play with. Like, it would just never find a game for you because people either hadn't gotten the content, or people just were playing on the basic playlist. It got to the point where just, like, there were too many factors in terms of who had what content, and it did end up splintering the player base. So I do understand on a certain level why EA would want to parse it out a little bit to avoid that. But I totally agree with you guys. I think it's a mistake to try to think that your game will capture the conversation over the next few months, especially when those months are so packed. Siege is not a model you might want to follow, but I do think going in with a plan of longevity, which is what Ubisoft did, whether or not it worked out for them at launch, is something to admire. I just don't know if Battlefield and the place it holds in EA's portfolio is the property to do that with.
Well, and it just, do they think that, I'm asking this sarcastically, do they think that, the Battle Royale mode is going to get here and all Battlefield 5 players are just going to be like, 100% of them are going to be like, okay, we're all moving on to Battle Royale. Like, if a map pack is going to splinter your player base, then a whole totally different game mode that is like the zeitgeist of gaming at this moment is going to definitely splinter your player base. Like, I think that logic is completely flawed and I just think Call of Duty did it right. They're like, hey, we basically have 3 games that are all in one package here, and you can buy it and just pick your lane, and we're going to advertise it as these 3 separate lanes that you pick. And we know that there are going to be people who buy this and they touch zombies and they don't touch anything else, or, pick whatever game mode that you have. And I just think that's a smarter place to be, because you capture a whole moment of conversation. And I feel like almost nobody is talking about Battlefield 5 right now. Just like anecdotally speaking, everybody's either talking about Red Dead. I feel like there's some buzz around Fallout 76, and I just think this Battlefield 5 thing is just an afterthought for a lot of people. And I think it's just another example of I just think EA is mismanaging these properties. Like Battlefield is an amazing, probably one of my favorite online first person shooters. Just game modes, map sizes, those sorts of things. But I have a hard time getting into any of it because I never feel like coming into it EA setting it up for success, and I feel that same way with Battlefield 5.
Yeah, I'm totally there. It's definitely one of my favorite first person shooter properties out there consistently. I loved Battlefield 1. And even though this game tends a little bit more towards the Call of Duty crowd, I based on the beta, I still enjoy the base gameplay. I don't understand why you wouldn't want to launch with Battle Royale. I just still marvel at that. But I think that the Call of Duty comparison is an apt one. That's an example of them totally understanding their player base and understanding that splintering it isn't exactly a bad thing. It just means you have different communities who are into different elements of the property, and they can all enjoy it. You don't have to split that out over time to try to somehow match this live service model. I don't know. I think EA is just still learning how to do this shit, and they're failing a lot more than they're succeeding.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
The splintering is a real concern, and I would argue that was a big problem for the longevity of the first Titanfall game. And they corrected that in Titanfall 2 by making all the expansions that released after that free to access. The issue in splintering isn't the existence of different ways of playing, it's the paywall. Because we just got to where so few people were willing to buy season passes that by the time you get to 2 or 3 season passes, most of your player base doesn't have the game, and it's going to be very hard for those who shelled out the money to find matches, and then that makes them less willing to invest in those in the future. So here's where we're at, and just taking out the paywall, like, that was a good move. And they've just gone a little bit too far in feeling like those need to be released at different times, I think. And the Titanfall thing was an example of releasing new content. This very much feels like just releasing part of the game. I don't know. Maybe that's unfair, but that's how it comes across to me.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like a buy now, and it's like just this slow drip of content, and I just think there's too many things to play to be so arrogant to think that you're going to be able to hold people's attention for X amount of months in any kind of meaningful way. I think Ubisoft has figured it out. Like, hey, you get you get a passionate fan base who kind of, and I think Rainbow Six Siege is kind of the exception to their properties. Like Rainbow Six Siege is kind of this anomaly of just we'll start with some hype, and then we'll fizzle out, and then we'll kind of resurge into this. I mean, Rainbow Six Siege now is bigger than it ever has been before.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the case for other Ubisoft properties. I think when it comes to like For Honor, when it comes to Ghost Recon Wildlands, when it comes to The Division, they got their passionate fan base of people, and they produced content that really catered to those people and just kept them passionate about it. And I think there's viability within that, but I don't think this Battlefield 5 model is viable at all, because it tries to get the best of both worlds. Like they want to have multiple moments of capturing the attention of the gaming audience at large, and it just doesn't work like that anymore.
Yeah, I think their choice to I like their choice to move towards the live service model over this premium pass. They call it premium pass, which
yeah, that's a whole
I already
different
have
story in
issues
messaging.
But I mean, I'll take free content over time over having to pay for it and splintering the player base anytime. Mm-hmm. So I do agree on a base level with their choice to do that. But I do think, I agree. Like they're trying to get into the live service model game, but not with a concrete. They don't have it doesn't seem like they have a concrete enough plan that will deliver over time. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is we don't know very really what content will be released over the next few months, other than the beginning of Tides of War, and it's not, they're calling it something else, but the Battle Royale mode. And Call of Duty's Battle Royale mode is already out and capturing so many people's attention that not launching with it is kind of a hazard to their overall success.
You know what it feels more like? It feels more like a Sea of Thieves kind of deal.
Very much
like,
so.
Hey, we're going to release and like you've been qualifying, it's not content light, but relative to the finished product it is. And like, you just got to trust us that we're going to push more content out. And I mean, I think again, that worked for the base of fans that Sea of Thieves got the attention of in the very beginning that decided to hold on for the ride. But I don't feel like Sea of Thieves is capturing more and more people. Like the whole spin of they're like, it's the best selling exclusive IP debut in Xbox One history. I'm like, that puts you next to Cuphead, Ori and the Blind Forest, Sunset Overdrive, and who else? You know, like, and that's what this model feels like. Like, hey, get on here in the beginning and just trust us that we're going to add some more cool stuff as we go along. I feel like I'm just saying the same thing over and over, but definitively, full stop. I don't feel like this is going to work.
Yeah, I mean, just to end this, I think it's just another example of a AAA like a AAA property and a company trying at all costs to avoid the words early access.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like. And I don't think it's 100% early access, but it's live service seems to be the operating term, like operating in the same way that a lot of companies do use the term early access. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's something that's good for the property or for the industry as a whole.
You can't get somebody to pay $60 for early access, Cody.
God forbid you have some sort of large beta test for a post-apocalyptic game.
That sounds awesome. Can I get in on that?
I think you can right now.
All right, guys. Let's move on. Let's talk about XO 2018. XO 18, sorry. Xbox's live event that they had over the weekend in Mexico City, Mexico. Just want to kind of look at this event from a 30,000-foot view. Just kind of touch on some of the announcements that they made, get you guys' thoughts on it. But let me just start here. Did you guys get a chance to watch any of this event?
I did not. Between being out of town and then being a zombie for 2 days from keeping up with teenagers who were keeping up with college kids, I I've not watched it yet. I've only read about it.
I didn't watch it live, but I watched all the stuff, like all the trailers and stuff that came out afterwards.
Yeah, that's how I did it too. Number one, for some reason, I still can't tell you what day that this happened on. For some reason, I thought it was Friday, but then I believe it was actually Saturday that it happened, correct? Like,
I don't even know.
Like, I feel like I didn't have a real clear idea of what the schedule was, and it's not like I'm completely naive to these things. Or, I mean, I follow Major Nelson on Twitter. I listen to gaming podcasts, and I didn't know when to tune in, or else I would have. But
we even talked about this like a few months ago when they announced it.
Yeah. So let's just I'm going to hit a couple of the highlights in terms of announcements. They spent a lot of time talking about Games Pass and games that are coming to Games Pass and what to expect. They announced that the app is now live for users, where you can kind of manage your library from your phone. They announced that PUBG was going to be coming to Game Pass next week, which I guess is this week. They announced a slew of other games that are going to be hitting the service. Agents of Mayhem, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, just to name a couple. They also reaffirmed it. People were just talking about this like it was news, where they were saying like all Xbox One published exclusives are going to be day and date with Xbox Game Pass. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's not new, right?
No.
Okay. People have been talking about it like it was, and I feel like that was something that they had talked about a lot. So a lot of Game Pass news. Crackdown 3 has gotten another release date. I'm not going to say that it is the release date, but it is another release date. It's releasing on February 15th, 2019. They should have just said February 15th and then been like, we didn't tell you which February 15th. They announced some new backward compatibility games, some new Sea of Thieves content, including a new PvP mode. Mouse and keyboard support is coming in an official way to Fortnite and Warframe in the coming weeks. Let's see. I think probably the biggest news out of all this is that Microsoft has acquired Wasteland maker In Exile Entertainment and Fallout New Vegas developer Obsidian Entertainment. And then, so that's pretty much those are the highlights from it. Was there anything that I missed that jumped out to you guys in terms of news?
No, those are the hits.
Yeah, you covered everything I was interested in. Wait, did you mention the mouse and keyboard support?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
So I tipped my hand to what I thought was the biggest news coming out of this event. But in your opinion, and we can use this also as an opportunity to talk about that story a little bit more. What's the news that came out of this that you're most excited about?
Well, I've tipped my hand, but it was the mouse and keyboard support. And Xbox announced that this was happening a few months back, but we didn't know what game it was going to come to first. We didn't have like a real solid exactly when it was going to happen. So I'm glad to see that this is coming quickly, and I'm really glad to see that it's starting with Fortnite. With Fortnite being something that you can play cross-platform, you almost need mouse and keyboard for you to have really any chance at all against the PC players. And they've got a nice little list of games that are going to get the mouse and keyboard support. None of them are huge games besides Fortnite, though. Coming later on, we've got, Warframe. Warframe's getting it. But then you got Bomber Crew, Deep Rock Galactic, Strange Brigade, Vermintide 2, War Thunder, and X-Morph Defense.
Did you make up one of those?
Yes. And then Children of Morta, DayZ, Minion Master, Moonlighter, Vigor, Warface, and War Groove. I recognize like 3 of the games I just read. But I am excited to see this implemented. For me, it's something we already knew was coming, but I'm excited to see a clear path of it being implemented, and I hope to see it come to more games soon.
So I've got a new idea here. About where Microsoft's heading. All right. So, and I'm not joking here. Bear with me.
Oh, okay. This was your serious face you make when you're about to tell me a joke.
No, this is me being serious.
All right.
I think it's clear from here, from where their attention lie. I write for a living.
I don't know where you're going.
From where the attention was throughout almost the entirety of this event, that they're really focused on their streaming platforms. That's not breaking news by any stretch of the imagination. But they're kind of doubling down on this idea, especially with their exclusives coming day and date, and just the bevy of games that they're going to be putting on Game Pass coming forward. Like, we also have the news, the rumors that, Scarlett's going to be like the streaming box, and then they're going to have a Mac Daddy box as well. I'm starting to think that Microsoft is going to turn the Xbox hardware division into a PC gaming division. That they're going to build Xboxes, like the actual boxes are going to be scalable, almost like pre-built PCs, but they're going to run Windows rather than like whatever the Xbox software is, the mouse and keyboard support, and the fact that all of their exclusives are coming to PC as well. And that's been the case, now for several years. I just feel like the pieces are falling into line where it's like, hey, we think that like console gaming has kind of been, this is going to sound pejorative and I don't mean for it to. The console gaming is kind of like the entry level into high end gaming. And I think that they're starting to see like, no, this streaming box is going to be the entry level into more high end gaming. The more that we're going to be able to put computing power into the cloud. And they'll say like, we're going to make the Xbox into our like gaming PC division, basically. A little wild speculation there. I'm not fully convinced that this is the truth, but I can see them moving in that direction.
Yeah. Go ahead, Cody.
Sorry. I don't know if I would agree 100% with that, but based on the event, I can 100% tell you what they are interested in, and it's all about Games Pass. They're really putting all their chips into this basket. And I think that is on a level, I think on a certain level, it is an indication of them being interested in subscription-based gaming, cloud-based gaming, moving kind of away from their hardware being so exclusive. Like every all the announcements for the studios they're acquiring, and even the language they used when they were talking about the studios they're acquiring, were all about how interested they are in getting those games to Games Pass. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't know how. I wouldn't speculate pushing that into like starter PC kits, although that is an interesting theory. But it's clear from the presentation that Games Pass is their next big thing. Like that's really what they're focusing on. And I have several concerns about that and how that'll look moving forward with the next Xbox and with this Xbox, but we can get into those later.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there have been a lot of things happening over the last few years and a lot of rumors that if they're not moving the direction you're talking about, Luke, they are making the Xbox a lot more similar to a PC. And we've talked about it before, but at some point the line becomes too blurry for me, and I'll wind up in the boat of I might as well just shift to gaming on a PC.
But so let's say they came out, right, and they were like, Xboxes, and again, we're wildly speculating here.
Wild speculation.
Let's say they come out and they're like, okay, we have a Steam client on Xbox now. You can download Steam games. We already have the mouse and keyboard support that's here anyway. Like, then that's one of those, because the time, I remember the first time you brought up the whole, like, I would just go to PC gaming was when we were talking about, like, modular consoles, when that was kind of the big rumor, which is funny. Like, that sounds like such an archaic idea now in the world of, like, streaming platforms that we're talking about today. But you were talking about like, well, if it's just that there's going to be new components every other year for me to buy and put in, like I might as well just buy a gaming PC. But I think this is less of a blurring of the line and more of just like a let's erase the line kind of deal. If they were to move in a direction like that, that was like our base models are going to just be streaming platforms, and then from there it's mouse and keyboard support that's running Windows 10. Like at that point, it's not that it's like a gaming PC. It becomes a gaming PC at that point, you know?
Yeah.
So does that change the narrative? Like if it was to go to something like that, and again, we're wildly speculating here, but I think this also speaks to how kind of news light this event was that we're having this conversation.
It was essentially just a 2-hour advertisement for Games Pass.
As far as whether it changes the narrative or not, if that's the direction they're moving, then I'm just saying that I wind up exactly where they want me, which is essentially what the Xbox One generation has been anyway.
Yeah. Cody, is there a particular story in this that excited you?
Well, the 2 acquisitions they announced are super exciting to me. In Exile, they're the studio that did Planetscape Torment, right? If I'm correct, which is was a really interesting and really well fleshed out RPG, like an old school RPG, and obviously Obsidian's RPG talents are well known. Both of those studios I'm excited to see what they do next, especially with backing from Microsoft. I'm interested in what studios they'll continue to announce, because it seems that their interest lies, other than, I guess Obsidian is kind of the outlier, but their interest lies in studios that are somewhere within like the AA staff range, like 50 people, 75 people, not these massive studios. And I think with these games coming to Games Pass and being available to people, and those studios having the backing of Microsoft, it gives them a little bit more freedom to kind of experiment and really like create quality titles, which I'm excited about. The studio I'm most excited to see about what they do with backing from Microsoft is Ninja Theory, just because of their last game. What they were able to accomplish with the budget they had was super impressive to me, and it was my favorite game of that year. But that acquisition was like the biggest news that came out of the event. It was the flashiest news. Overall, I'm just interested by them choosing to put so much stock in Games Pass.
You got to think about it. If you're buying up all these 50 to 75 people studios, you know, you're essentially giving them all their own games with gold platform, and think about a game like Rocket League and how much of a signal boost it got from like PlayStation Plus. You know, now every single one of your games gets this signal boost. I mean, the engagement numbers on Sea of Thieves to start their opening weekend were staggering. Same with State of Decay 2. Forza Horizon is a huge franchise that only got bigger with Forza Horizon 4. Like, why would a studio not want to come on and be a part of it? Because it also seems like Microsoft has little to no interest of being super authoritative when it comes to creative direction. You know, like they want to provide the resources for these developers to make the games that they want to make. The studio I'm most excited about is The Initiative. Like, and that's not an acquisition. That's one that they've created internally, but it's just like forget the gimmicky shit of just like it's Quad A or whatever they've been referring to it as, but just like the idea that it is going to be this orders of magnitude larger in terms of budget, people involved, and scope of the project, like that excites me. I think it's been a long time since we've seen Microsoft just kind of take the gloves off and take a big risk with a game. And I think it's the nature of the circumstances at this point, but they're just kind of in a position where they have to. And I feel like for the last year, we've just seen them kind of swinging for the fences. And I'm excited for when they finally make contact and we get to see some of these projects land.
Yeah, I'm hopeful for the future of Microsoft for the first time in a long time. I think to your point about a signal boost, Hellblade was a game that I mean, compared to like relative to the kind of game it was and the size of game it was, sold pretty well. Even though it wasn't massively profitable for the company, it sold well over time. But I think a lot of people, if that game going on Games Pass, if it were to go to Games Pass on launch, Ninja Theory's next game, people will have Games Pass to be able to play like the Dooms and these larger games. And then if you see that, you're like, oh, I might as well just pop in and see what this thing is about. Gives you exposure to that game. And as a studio that's already signed with Microsoft, they're not really worried about like the whole. I think a lot of third parties are kind of. I'm not sure how the payment works for putting your game at launch onto Games Pass. I think a lot of AAA third parties are still suspicious, or not suspicious, but they're unfamiliar with what that means for them. And I don't know what it means for them either. I don't know how you go about getting paid for your game. People accessing your game on that platform. It's not like they're spending $60. They're spending a $10 a month subscription fee. So I think for some studios, it's still not a promising prospect. But for the studios that Microsoft has signed, it's a fantastic Sigma boost and a fantastic way to get some of these games in front of people that might not otherwise play them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And the studio acquisitions are the thing I'm most excited about too. I'm super excited about the direction that Microsoft can go. I'm excited about the next generation of Sony consoles because I think they're just going to kind of double down on what they've been doing. But I think right now we're starting to see what the reason that competition is so important in any kind of market, because Xbox is doing all kinds of just interesting, weird things. And I'm not sure that every single one of them is going to be successful, but I think that a handful of them are going to be successful. I think the backward compatibility thing is already changing the landscape of what gaming is going to look like moving forward. I think we're going to see far more backward compatibility when it comes to, PlayStation 5 and those sorts of things as a result. I don't know if this Xbox Game Pass stuff is going to necessarily pan out in any kind in a long-term way, but I think they're putting themselves in the best position possible for that to be the case. And I mean, the Obsidian thing's just exciting too, because of their RPG prowess. And I do think that is something that's really missing in the exclusive space for Microsoft.
Yeah. And in general.
Yeah, that's true. Outside of Horizon, there's really.
Yeah. And that's like an open, it's a RPG light.
So, let me ask you guys this. There was some, I don't want to say miscommunication or misinterpretation or however it can be expressed of just what people were supposed to expect coming into this event. They were pretty upfront about like, hey, don't expect any Halo news here. We're not going to have Halo. And then I think they said the same thing for Gears. But yet there was also some other tweets that Major Nelson sent out that seemed to suggest that this event was going to rival E3 in some sort of way. And I don't think that that's necessarily what he meant by those tweets, but the way the gaming side of internet works is they took those statements and ran with it. Where do you guys think this falls in terms of? Do you think this is kind of the impact they wanted to make with an event like this? Did the announcements that they make kind of justify having a live event like this? What's kind of your read on the success of the event as the event?
For me, I really don't feel like there was enough going on to warrant having a big separate event. Like, this is stuff I could have found out about through individual announcements and been just as excited as I am about it now. I mean, it's all cool stuff. I'm not upset that they had an event by any means, but I'm also not overwhelmed by the content of the event. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the expectation I had going in was what they had set originally, which is that this is like a fan event. It's I think they called it a celebration of all things Xbox. Yeah. And it ultimately was that. I think in terms of messaging, they nailed it. because I am serious when I say it. It was essentially just a 2-hour advertisement for Games Pass. Like, they nailed it over and over again. They hit it dead on in terms of the messaging. But I think the announcements they made and the trailers they showed, mostly for the AAA like third party stuff, I don't think it necessarily warranted an event of this scale. Did they release another trailer for Kingdom Hearts 3?
Yeah, they announced that Winnie the Pooh was making a return.
Which is...
Never mind, this event was worth it.
For some people in my social circle, it definitely was.
Did this one look like... did the trailer look like it was made after, like, 2011? Because the other ones didn't.
It looked fine. But, like, the trailers would have been fine just releasing as, like, on their own. Like, it's just another trailer for Kingdom Hearts 3. It's another trailer for Devil May Cry. I don't know if any of that stuff warranted an actual event, but my expectations going in weren't super high. I think I didn't see Major Nelson's tweet, so I'm totally unfamiliar with that stuff. I'm only familiar with what the messaging they had when they originally announced it was, which is this is an event for the fans, celebration of Xbox, and we have a couple of cool announcements to go along with that. And if you look at it that way, which is how my expectations were set, I think it delivered on the expectations I had, but I ultimately don't think it warranted like a massive event like this.
Yeah. 2 points. First of all, when it comes to deciding on an event, I think if I'm at Microsoft or Sony or or Nintendo, any of the big three, and the idea is like, hey, we're going to put on an hour to 2 hour live event for fans. My thing is just we want one big announcement. We want one big reveal that we kind of kept under wraps, and we want it to be one of our pillar properties that we're bringing here, and that's what the first PSX had. They had some big hitter announcements in it, and then they hit this wall in year 2 with it, where it was just like, oh, we don't necessarily have it. But I think if people leave that event being like, oh man, we got to see The Last of Us 2. We got to see a trailer for The Last of Us 2 or for Uncharted, or we got to see a trailer for Halo or Gears of War or something. Like, I think that you automatically turn the tide, and it has a trickle-down effect where it makes all the other announcements that you made that much more exciting because they were all part of this event that ended on this big bang. And so I think it would have warranted an event like this had they just found that one thing. I don't know what it could have been, if it's a teaser for one of a game that one of the studios you just acquired is working on, or, like The Initiative. I mean, The Initiative isn't anything super brand new. Like, I think they announced the name for it at E3, but the studio had been assembled long before that. Like, whatever it is, like, if you're going to get people together, have the one thing that can create a buzz. Go ahead.
And just like last week, it doesn't have to be anything major. Show me some mountains with Elder Scrolls in front of it.
Yeah, definitely. And then I cannot remember what the second point that I was going to make was. So, no, it's good. I lost it before you started talking. So, what was your last point, Cody? Because that may refresh my memory.
My last point.
Oh.
I was just talking about expectations.
Yeah, no, that does nothing. All right, it's gone. Probably unimportant.
The only other thing I have to say is that for an event that's ostensibly about the fans, all the announcements and all the messaging seem to be much more directed at like the industry as a whole and like press and investors. Like the direction being pointed towards Games Pass. I don't know if like the hardcore fans who were at that event really cared that much about that consistent messaging. I also don't know what, as a teaser or a tag, they could have shown, because you can show mountains for a game like Elder Scrolls 6, but for any of these studios games that I don't think many of them are even that far along, and they're totally new. They're probably going to be totally new properties. You can't just show mountains.
That's true. That's valid.
Well, they did it with.
Although
they did it with Starfield.
Yeah, but people had known about that for a while.
I mean, it had been rumored. Like it was there was nothing official about it. That was the official announcement at E3, and that's a new property that we know nothing else outside of just,
it's Bethesda's sci-fi. That's it.
2 points. I remember my point from last time, but a new point because I'll continue to remember it. So I do think that I think that's an interesting point about who it was directed at. I think when you're hyping up Game Pass, you're really talking not just to investors and to people looking towards the future of Xbox. You're talking to people at home who are watching on their consoles like I was during Gamescom where they kept talking about Game Pass and I was like, okay, all right, you got me. I'm going to subscribe for Game Pass right here, right now. And then I've got a toy box of things to open up. And whereas with the live event, you're hoping that the fans go out and, hey, here's a game reveal or something. You guys can go play it on the floor right now. We've got consoles just outside these doors that you can go play it on. And it was lacking any kind of that announcement where it makes it feel like, man, this was really worth the flight to get here. And I don't know how much people were flying into this event, but still, you want to give something to the people that showed up. And I felt like it was missing that. And if you're going to put on a live event, you really need to have that. And that's the other thing about an event like this. This is the point from before is just there's what we see and then there's what we don't see. And we got to see this, inside Xbox, this big inside Xbox stuff, but we didn't get to see the festivities that were surrounding this event that may have made it worth having the event because there was a lot of cool stuff going on around it for the fans. So to be fair to Xbox, there's that side of it we're totally unaware of.
Shout out to Mexico City, by the way.
Yes.
Good for them getting an event.
Shout out. Larry.
What?
Shout out to you for the next topic.
All right. So I have just decided to establish myself as the guy who comes on this podcast where we talk about the 3 biggest gaming news stories of the week. And instead, I live in the past.
He's like, can we talk about Activision being disappointed in Destiny 2's numbers? No, we're going to talk about this.
We're going to talk about something from 2012 this time.
Is Activision... Well, I mean, we can talk about that real quick. They are, and they should be, and they should have done better. Next.
Your collaborative audio feature article, ladies and gentlemen.
Boom roasted.
So, yeah, my news story is just going to be a blip on the radar for most people. But for me, this actually was a pretty big deal announcement. Gaming guide creator Prima Games is shutting down. And I suspect that a lot of younger gamers don't even know what Prima Games is. That wouldn't shock me in the least. But so children, gather around and let me tell you a tale. Back in my day, before we had internet,
which in West Virginia was 3 years ago.
Depending on where in West Virginia, still they don't have it. But in all seriousness, before the internet was a big thing, Prima was the big seller of gaming guides. So they'd release a book that gave you a complete walkthrough of a game, how to beat the game, all the secrets in the game, if there were cheat codes, how to access those, if there were special strategies and how you approach multiplayer aspects of the game. You could find everything in this gaming guide. And in addition to that, they were generally really nice, good-looking things, things you might set out and things that you might collect. They had great artwork in them. They were pretty cool. And so, although it's a blip on the radar as far as news goes, because the reality is Prima has been rendered irrelevant for a really long time. But it's a big deal to me because they were a big part of gaming for such a long time. So I just want to talk about it a little bit. Did you guys ever purchase any of Prima's strategy guides, and why? Whether it was for the artwork or to actually get better at a game. What's been your experience with the guides?
Yeah, I've only purchased 2 Prima strategy guides. There was one for Halo 3 that I bought way back in the day. And then I bought the collector's edition strategy guide for The Witcher, and I think they were the content makers for the actual guide portion of it. I don't know. I actually don't know how that works. If they're responsible for creating all of it or just the interior content. But regardless, I know they were responsible for the interior content because it came with a digital code for a Prima digital guide. But a part, I'm trying to decide if I need to admit this because I don't think this was allowed. When I worked at GameStop, after a set amount of time, guides would get what's called pennied out. And I think that we were supposed to field destroy them, which is where you just rip off the covers and throw them in the dumpster behind the store. But as a staff, if something got pennied out, we would just take it home with us. And so I had like a boatload of guides from my time at GameStop that I would bring home with me. I still have some. And I'd probably get fired for admitting that if I was still working at GameStop. But if they want to come after me for the, $200 of games of guides that I have, whatever. But I appreciated something that Engadget said in the article you linked to here for this story, and it was the guide for a lot of gamers was like the de facto coffee table book for gamers, and for me it was never.
Yeah.
I never bought a strategy guide to know how to or looked in a strategy guide to know how to beat a boss or to understand the stats behind a weapon that I was going to use in a match or anything. It was just, this has cool artwork. I'm one of the, there's this awesome subreddit, and I'm trying to remember what it's called, but basically it shows you the from the top view of popular TV shows set designs.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
I've always appreciated there's geometry about a place that you don't even really consider, and that's that was always my favorite part of flipping through guides is when you'd get that overview of a map. And some of the coolest to look at are the Overwatch ones, just because number one, I'm intimately familiar with all of those maps at this point, and still seeing the things I don't know about. But yeah, getting into the guides, it was always about the artwork and the layout, and just the fact that games have this much information to have even written about them was just always fascinating to me. So, yeah, it's a relic of the past, but it is something, I'll shed a little tear for, because there was something cool about seeing a brand new strategy guide on the shelf at a new game release and picking it up and being able to flip through it before you got your hands on the game and stuff like that. Yeah. So, this saddens me as much as it saddens you, Larry.
I'm glad to hear that, because I half expected to come on here and you guys be like, who cares? So, Cody, if you want to say that, feel free.
No, I mean, I'll shed a tear for it too. I don't know if I ever bought specifically Prima guides, but I definitely bought strategy guides. I remember my strategy guide for Kingdom Hearts was ragged and dog-eared by the time I was done with it.
Did it have a red spine?
I'm trying to think.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so. I think it was just a black with the text on it. And I loved that thing. Other than the fact that it helped me, it was just a cool glimpse into the art of the game and the design of the game. That's what I appreciated most about a lot of strategy guides. It really gave you a sense, and I still love this about the digital guides that you can find on the internet. It gives you a sense of kind of the design work that goes into those games just from a strategy level, like a high level strategy. So yeah, I'll definitely shed a tear for kind of this kind of thing, this lost art going away. I do, for me, the coffee table book. God damn it. It's only Monday. The coffee table book aspect of it for me has been replaced by art books. I'm one of those weird guys who does love getting the art books for games. I have an art book for The Last of Us, for BioShock Infinite, for all these games that I love. And I use those as coffee table books. But yeah, although the function of Prima strategy guides has definitely been taken over by the IGNs and GameFAQs of the world, I'll definitely pour one out for him.
Yeah. So I've purchased many of their guides over the course of my life, and back when they were more relevant and I didn't have internet access, I bought them for the primary purpose to help me beat games. But as I got older, I bought very few of them, and the ones I held on to for the art purposes, or just to have a fun little connection to a game that I particularly loved. So do any of those guides still stand out to you that you did purchase, or even maybe you just looked at one and it really struck you?
I don't know. I think aesthetically they all kind of had a similar vibe, at least all the ones I've seen, and that's not meant to be disparaging. It's I thought that they had something really special. I really love my special edition Witcher one, just because of the artwork and the layout of it. So I don't think any of them particularly stand out to me, except just to say like for games that I particularly connected with.
Okay.
The original Dark Souls strategy guide I had was pretty great. And on that point that Luke was making about kind of looking at maps from a top-down perspective, it's great to look at that. Strategy guides were particularly great for that kind of stuff from software games, because the maps are so interlinked and layered, and you kind of just the map design from software games is absurd, and so to be able to kind of look at it from that perspective, I always loved. It allowed me to understand it a bit more, but it also, more than anything else, just allowed me to marvel at the design work that went into this stuff when you take a step back and really get out of your head and look at it. So I always loved that one. And I mean, that game is hard as hell, so I definitely used a lot of the tips they had in there.
Yeah. There are two that stand out to me just because I would not have beaten the games without the Prima strategy guides. One that I had was for Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I never went back and played that game as an adult, so I don't know if the game seemed harder than it was. But as a kid, there was no way I would have beaten the Water Temple without that strategy guide.
My wife played it 2 years ago and had to use an internet guide for like the entire thing. So it is as hard as you remember it.
All right. And then the other one was Jet Force Gemini. So you go through this game, you get to the final boss, you beat him, and then he flies off, and you find out that you need a component to your spaceship to get further into space, and you can only get it from the tribal chief if you go rescue all these tribals that you've been able to rescue throughout the game. But you can also blow their heads off if that is what interests you as a fifth grade boy. And and so then you have to go back through every level and find every one of these little bears. And I had to have the strategy guide to pull that off. And then art-wise, I got a Star Wars Battlefront one. I've never even opened it, left it in its plastic wrap. It's a beautiful guide from the outside. I don't know what the inside looks like. And I also have my good old Elder Scrolls Oblivion strategy guide.
Oh, nice.
Because I beat every mission in that game, even side missions, except the Dark Brotherhood. I only had a few missions left to go, and then Skyrim came out, and I never went back and finished it. But I used, by that point, the internet was available, but for the base game, I just stuck with the good old-fashioned strategy guide made of paper. And I love it because it gives you information on every creature you encounter. Like you have the sheep, and it tells you its magic skill and stealth skill and attack damage. It's so detailed. These guides told you everything you could ever want to know and more about these games.
I do remember I did use the Witcher 3's bestiary that was in.
I was going to ask about that.
I did use that in the strategy guide that I had because to me, it was like more of a connection point of just feeling like a Witcher, of like, oh, I've got this book that has all the details about these monsters I'm about to encounter. Let me reference this. I know I can press start and just as easily access it, but let me add this inconvenient step of having to physically find it.
It's like when you're in the middle of a game and you start jotting things down on a piece of paper with a pencil, like to figure out puzzles. It does make you feel more connected to it, especially for a game like The Witcher. That's awesome.
Yeah. So obviously the big thing that led to the decline of Prima Games was the internet, and why would I buy a strategy guide when I can just Google it for free? But do you guys think there were any other cultural changes in gaming that led to their decline? Or do you think it's pretty much just the internet?
No, I definitely think I think there's been a fundamental change in game design since the days where where strategy guides were, almost essential for beating games. I mean, the whole philosophy behind design now is all about progress and constantly moving forward in a game. And it's funny. Like, people talk about Dark Souls like it's this unique design for a game, and in ways it is, but in a lot of ways the game design philosophy behind Dark Souls is a relic of the past, of just like, get in there and figure it out. A lot of A/B test and trial and error, and that's just not the way that a lot of modern day game developers design their games. I think the most egregious example of this are the Assassin's Creed games before Origins and Odyssey. And I can't speak, maybe Origins and Odyssey are just as bad, but just like, there's a waypoint and a guideline to literally everything that you can do here. And it'll say, you'll get something that's like, look for the key, and it'll just start glowing where the key is. And it's not, you don't even walk around to find it. Like, so I think there was a fundamental change in game design that was just like, everything that you need to know about this game you can see on your television screen without having to go into a guide, is another big factor. Not as big as the internet, but a big one nonetheless.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Just there are very few games where you have to spend any time figuring out what needs to be done to progress. Huh.
Yeah, I also just think the way games are constantly evolving now makes it difficult to justify purchasing like a physical copy of a guide that is set in stone.
Yeah.
Games just evolve and change so much over time now, and content is always coming out for those games that it's hard for a lot of people to justify investing in that. And when you can just update it on the internet, update your wiki on the internet with new information, new guides for the DLC, it just makes more sense.
Can you imagine purchasing an Overwatch strategy guide and it's like, and then you can put down Bastion's personal sentry shield? and people are there like, what, where is that ability?
Yeah. Those are both great examples of things that led to their decline. I think one more, you've already hit on this, Cody, but there was this interim period where you could find the information on the internet, but they still functioned as those coffee table books. You'd buy them for the artwork. But now, artwork books are so widely available. Like, so many games get those that you would just buy that because it's going to have even more of what you're after anyway. So, yeah, all those things. These strategy guides just aren't relevant anymore. And in some ways, I'll miss them, but in some ways, obviously, I don't miss them because I haven't bought one in years. But they were a good touchstone. Interesting piece of gaming history is what they will be now. Do you guys see anything else in gaming that has been rendered irrelevant by the shifting culture? And do you see anything else that may be on the chopping block?
GameStop. I mean, and really, like, in a way, I'm going to shed a tear for GameStop the day that it closes, and I think that day is past in a lot of ways because of just the shifting model of the way that they do business and where their focus lies with like the Think Geek stuff and all that. But no, like GameStop was a central part of my gaming identity when I was in high school and in college. Like, we would make special trips to GameStop just to go browse the shelves for an hour, and we'd go to midnight releases at GameStop but now with like the digital future and the staggered release schedules, like there's not much in terms of reasons to go to these brick and mortar stores anymore. And I think we're quickly approaching the day where we're going to be reading a story about GameStop shutting down, and a lot of people are going to rejoice over that fact. But to me, like, I have a lot of nostalgia for that place.
Yeah.
Yeah, something, I guess it's not obsolete yet. And I don't think in the near future it will be, but it's definitely becoming less and less of a thing. I mean, just physical media in general.
Yeah.
This is the first year, I think, in a while for me that I've just like really started weaning myself off of buying physical versions of games. Like I downloaded Red Dead Redemption 2. I downloaded Spider-Man. I downloaded Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It's just becoming, physical media in general is just becoming a thing of the past. And as someone who's still very much tied to it in a lot of ways, I still buy Blu-rays, I still buy vinyl. It saddens me a little bit, but for games, it just seems to make a lot more sense. And that's something we'll continue to see change over the next few years. We're not there yet, but
Yeah. Mine is almost the same thing you just said, but a little more specific with the physical media. For many of the same reasons we're losing Prima games, we've already lost. I'm blanking on what they're actually called right now. The booklets inside of the cases.
I think they're just called booklets, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So they would
like game manuals.
Yeah, game manuals. They'd tell you the controls and they'd give you information on the world and the characters. And as a kid, like I'd go to the store. My mom would let me buy a game. And on the car ride home, I would read every page of that booklet, just getting hyped for this game I'm about to play. and I liked those. You'd have a little bit of artwork in them. Halo had some really interesting ones. And so I'll miss those, and I'll also miss the special casing that you'd be able to get for special editions and such. And they still do that to a degree, but I don't. Even the special editions you buy now, I just don't think most companies don't put the same level of effort that they used to in those special editions. Like I used to shell out for some special edition Halo for the packaging, and I haven't seen anything in a long time that was like, yeah, that's worth the extra money. Like Halo Reach was this awesome case that you had to pull this thing out of and open up, and it had like a very long journal written by Dr. Halsey. It had like patches and stuff for jackets. It had one of the ID card things for the base that Halsey was in. All kinds of cool stuff packed in there. But that stuff, it's just going to fall by the wayside.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I agree at large with that point. But I do think we're going to start to see the pendulum swing with more like boutique shops and places where it's like, I think there is going to be a greater emphasis on physical collector's editions of games, but in a much more limited capacity. I think like limited run games, the company, like I think that's a really cool idea of like, hey, we're going to take this really popular only digital game and we're going to give it a limited release run. And I think you're going to see more boutique brick and mortar stores, not the big like corporate chains like GameStop, but these boutique shops that pop up and it's like, hey, we're going to get 5 pre-orders for this Fallout special edition, first come, first serve. And they are going to be high quality things. And I don't know. I'm kind of excited about where physical media can go because the only reason I would hold on to it is because I just like having the spines of the games on the shelf, And,
yeah.
I finally let go of that. But I think we'll start to see some, and you're going to pay a premium price for them. But I think we're going to see some more interesting things happening on that front because collectibles in games is still a really, really big thing.
Yeah, that's true.
You're already starting to see
I've
that
got a collectible
too.
right here. This Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker Big Boss Pack PSP still in the box.
Mint condition.
You
yes,
won
I
that,
did
didn't
from
you?
Kind of Funny.
Nice.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think I'm super excited for that too. And you're already starting to see that. I can't remember the name of the company, but they do a bunch of really cool like they'll do kind of months dedicated to specific games where they'll release limited release kind of special stuff. Like I got a really, really cool Journey soundtrack vinyl that has great art, and the actual records are each a different color with a different version of the Traveler circling around it. Really cool stuff. I mean, I paid a great price for that stuff. But it's the kind of thing, like, I think you see this in every other medium. Like, as music has shifted to being way more digital, companies have really started to double down on the specialty item stuff for vinyl and for physical releases. Same thing with movies and television. Like, the few that still release physical versions of those. So I'm super excited to see that pendulum swing back around.
There were a bunch of anniversary horror things that came out this year, physical, that were interesting. Trick or Treat, it got a re-release with some artwork, different poster, that kind of thing. And there was a lot of John Carpenter stuff that came out this year. So if you're into horror, it might be worth looking into. To your point about GameStop, we've talked before about how the thing keeping them in business is you needed them for hardware, but that's becoming less and less true. Have you guys seen where you can actually order new controllers and stuff through your Xbox now?
Yeah.
Like that's so crazy to me.
Yeah, and if we're moving to a more streaming platform where it's not gonna be as integral to upgrade your hardware like at these regular intervals, it's gonna become less and less important too. So I still don't think we're in a spot where Microsoft and Sony and them can really alienate the brick and mortar, but we're getting closer than we ever have been before.
Yeah.
By the way, the name of that company I was thinking of was I Am 8-Bit. I just wanted to shout that out.
All right.
They have a bunch of really cool stuff.
All right, guys. Well, let's move on to everybody's favorite game that we play on this podcast. There are too many games, but this isn't one of them. The way this game works, I've got 4 games listed here. 3 of them are real. 1 of them is fake. You two will guess which one is fake. If you get it correct, you get a point. If neither of you get it correct, I get a point. Update on the score here. Larry has 3 points. Cody has 3 points. I have 2 points. Are you ready for this week? Any questions?
Questions?
And I'm going to scare the hell out of you. All right, guys. First game. Sand is the Soul. An unusual adventure game with combat and RPG elements. Everything you do has a result, and the so-called right choice does not always lead to good. Accept the consequences of your decisions and explore, fight, die, or go mad in the gloomy post-punk Victorian lore of Cross Hill. Number 2. Distrust. A helicopter crash left a group of explorers stranded near an Arctic base. As they try to find a way back, all they are doing is sinking deeper into a nightmare scenario. When they sleep, they attract a terrifying force that sucks the life out of their bodies. But the longer they battle exhaustion and stay awake, the less likely they are to survive. Number 3. Bad Dream, Fever. Not colon fever, but like the punctuation. The world is covered in strange ink. An unknown plague has gathered its cruel harvest. The city seems to be completely empty and dead, but in its every corner there are manifestations of fear, sorrow, loneliness, and suffering. Number 4, Forever Fountain. Take on the role of Antonio de Herrera y Tordesillas and captain the San Cristobal, Juan Ponce de Leon's head ship. Navigate tumultuous waters and uncover the demonic forces behind the Fountain of Youth. All right, guys, so we have Sand is the Soul, Distrust, Bad Dream, Fever, and Forever Fountain.
Fever.
Larry.
That is a bad dream.
Larry.
Yes.
What's your guess?
Gosh. None of these jump out to me this week. So great job. You're a fantastic liar. And I think this is a real game, but I just want to say it. Bad Blood, Fever. That's my pick.
All right, Codsworth.
I'm going to go with the first
Sand
one.
is the Soul.
Yeah. The last one, you couldn't really even pronounce the name of the guy in the game, so I don't think that one is fake.
See, I thought that was a ploy. I
Could
don't
be.
know what to
You might be
believe.
very clever.
I am very clever. That is the fake one.
Oh, no. Good on you.
And I just took names from actual historical people. I wanted to do something about the Fountain of Youth. I knew Juan Ponce de Leon. That was like the whole legend was he was in the search for it. And Antonio de Herrera y Tordesillas is actually his head captain of his ships. So, yeah. I play this game. I play
Points
this game
for you.
with Lauren every Monday before I bring it to you guys. And she was like, well, I know, she immediately was like, I know number 4 is real because you couldn't pronounce the names. So the logic worked. All right, guys. So it's all square at 3 heading into Thanksgiving. We've got
All
a few
right.
more weeks of this game. I still haven't decided what the prize is going to be, but the loser involves something with death in their life. So fear,
Wow.
sorrow, loneliness, and suffering. That game,
If I'd known this, I wouldn't have started playing.
that game was just word soup. An unknown, an
Colon
unknown
fever.
plague has gathered its cruel harvest. I bet the person wrote that and was like, damn, I'm a good writer. All right, guys, who are you? Where can we find you? And what are you going to be tweeting about this week?
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at Larry Hunts Zombies, and you won't find me tweeting much this week. I'm just I'm taking a week where I'm spending very little time on social media because I'm tired of hearing all of you whine all of the time.
So am I. I'm Cody. I'm at Pro Electioneer on Twitter. What will I be tweeting about this week? Probably Battlefield towards the tail end of the week once I start sinking my teeth into it.
All right, I'm Luke. You can find me on Twitter at TK from Antioch, and I'm probably this week just going to start tweeting out some cryptic things about something I'm working on that I'm really excited about for the beginning of the year. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. This is PvA Radio every week, bringing 2 of the biggest gaming news stories and then something from a half a decade ago. You can find us on
Guilty.
You can find us on podcast services everywhere. We're also on YouTube. Just search PvA Radio. Give us a follow over on twitch.tv/PvA Radio. We're going to be streaming over there here in the next few weeks. But next week's Thanksgiving, we will have a show next week, though, because we record this deal on Monday. Until then, we love you guys. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Why did I say that? I'm sorry.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.